you guys want to talk about?
So cloud computing, it's sort of a buzzword, the cloud. So really what it means is, are you comfortable giving somebody else that maybe have technical credentials control of your information? And I think there's a cultural shift, right? So 10 years ago, raise your hand if you were comfortable depositing checks into an ATM machine. How many people deposited checks in an ATM machine in the last 2 weeks? There's a cultural shift taking place. By the way, there's a lot more hands on the second question. So, I think there's a cultural shift taking place. I think people are comfortable letting, giving into some level of automation, giving up control of your information to other people that you maybe, for whatever perception, trust now, but you didn't trust 10 or 15 years ago. And the cloud computing model is not new. My first job out of college was selling CAD/CAM software. And we were selling traditional software seats where you'd go into a company, install seats on individual computers, and we were charging per seat. I remember a lot of discussion at that point in time. We didn't call it cloud computing. We called it ASP, Application Service Providing, I think. But the technology, the bandwidth wasn't there to deliver the software. And we didn't think that the customer's mindset was ready to take their very important engineering data and hand it over to us to manage. So there's just a cultural shift now. And the beauty behind cloud computing is it's for most cloud computing models, it's a pay-as-you-go service that has a very low barrier to implementation or barrier to entry. So Sean Olson with CloudWise, for example, we talked to Sean last week about putting in some IP phones for us. No setup fees, no contracts that I knew of. I don't want to ruin your sales pitch, Sean. But it's easy. It's easy, and I'm completely comfortable handing over our phone system to Sean and his company, because it's one, I'm conditioned to think it's okay, and two, I trust the business. I'd be comfortable turning over, if I'm a bank and you guys are the experts in banking software, I'm comfortable turning over my banking process to the Live Oak system or Encino system.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, he doesn't
I'm glad
currently
the
have a
socks
bank.
didn't keep you.
I think the key is it's easy. For us, I know when we design our own software and we house everything on site, and it was always in the back of my head. Hurricane's coming, power's going to go out, or sometimes there would be a car wreck in Burgaw and knock out a telephone pole, and our server's down. That means our accounting system's down, website's down, we're dead in the water. We made the shift to a program called NetSuite, which I believe Oracle owns, which is a cloud-based accounting backend, e-commerce front end, CRM, kind of does everything for us. So we use that. We use Google Business Suite for all of our company email. We use Google Docs religiously, within the company. Everybody lives on Google Chat, chatting from office to office or even across the desk. And I think it all just comes down to ease of use. It's easy and it works.
Okay. Question at table 16, Malika. I think there's a microphone coming.
Hi, so I was wondering if any of you had any experience outsourcing tech work to using services like Elance or Odesk, and how that's worked out for you. And for Jimmy, when you do a search on Google, on my mobile device anyway, for Live Oak Bank, Bank of America is the second search result, so you must be onto something.
We found out they were watching us, especially when we show up for a lot of stuff for them too. I gotta outthink them. They're so much bigger.
So we're going to talk about the outsourcing.
This is a perfect plug for my other business. Not only have I used services like Elance, I own a business like Elance called Virtual eStaff. And when I was at Global Test Supply, I hired some labor in the Philippines to do admin work, data entry, the data entry for us to maintain the catalog, update prices as new price sheets came out was a fairly monotonous and inconvenient task that we had to do. Nobody internally wanted to do it, so we outsourced it to a couple ladies in the Philippines. That worked out so well that we wound up starting a business called Virtual eStaff, where we offshore administrative work. I'm not an advocate for offshoring jobs, but the reality is that our culture, as an employer, I have found that people don't, it's not that they don't want jobs, it's not that they can't find jobs, it's that they don't want to do the jobs that are available to do here. And nobody wants to come to work in the United States of America, or very few people want to come to work in the United States of America and engage in a data entry task that's repetitive and monotonous for 8 hours a day for, $8 to $10 an hour. Well, it turns out in the Philippines, they love that kind of work. Culturally, they embrace it. And that's the type of work that they're seeking out. So it's worked out very well for us. There's other services available from Elance and Guru and some of these websites that I've not taken advantage of, copywriting and telemarketing and programming and what have you. But I think certain jobs make a lot of sense to consider those types of contract services.
Another question, Kevin, table 44.
Hey, good morning. This question was more specific for Robert. You had mentioned earlier that not to write your own code, and I'm right on board with you with that for the most part. But I think that, do you feel that it's important to have some level of web programming competency so that you can make certain changes to a website or do certain things without having to outsource those if it's something that's need to be done really quickly? Do you feel that there's a basic level that everybody should know when it comes to whether it's basic HTML or anything like that?
There's no question. So the analogy is if you're going to be a builder, you better know how to use a chop saw and bang nails. It doesn't mean that's what you're going to be doing every day, but you got in order to manage your subs, you got to know a little bit about the job that they're doing. I think the challenge, though, when it comes to this subject is that there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of different things that you need to know. And what's important is you have to figure out a way to, especially when dealing with a programmer or a company that builds websites, you really need to know when to call BS. And that's tough to learn other than through trial and error. But there's no question that the more knowledge you have on the nature of the job, the better you're going to be able to manage the job itself.
Got a lot of questions about we talked a lot about communicating. Again, not communicating in a sales way, but sharing your true knowledge and engaging people. At the same time, how do you not overwhelm people? How do you try to, obviously for all of our businesses, we probably love to throw everything out there at people and see what sticks, and assume business is going to come in. But how do you judge whether to send something out and what medium to send it out in?
That's a good question. For us, we've had a lot of success with Facebook and building an audience. And I think Facebook is a great passive way to do it because you're not throwing it out in people's faces like an email. One of the ways that we engage and create a dialogue with people, or we'll do a giveaway, like a trivia contest online, and we'll direct people to Ampware's, the Fender Amp Field Guide site for the answer. So they go back to our site and they come back with an answer. So engaging customers in a passive way, in a way that makes them feel like they have control of it, and you're not just throwing it out there to them. We've seen a lot of success from them.
I was going to say, along with that is, with vets, there's always a great story. same with dentists. I think that there's always some wonderful thing that has happened at some point that you can listen to and engage them. But another thing that we do and is we'll say, after the earthquake in Haiti or in the tsunami in Japan, we'll pay for vets to go over there in relief and then come back and tell us about it. And we may not know them beforehand, but there's an organization that exists. And my partner, Laura Petty, did a great job finding a dentist that goes down and just does free dental work in just downtrodden areas and out of the country and in the country. And he's not even a customer of ours and brings back that story, but then he posts it on his Facebook page with all the other dentists that look, and then that helps create the conversation. So sometimes you can, for $2,000, $3,000, something like that, depending on what it is, you can let someone go about and say, go do something great, and then come back and tell me about it.
So it's almost like a sponsored story, or
Yeah,
it's not a
And
quote ad.
it's always in an altruistic sense too. Like no money changing hands other than you go give this away and come back and tell us.
Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn says fail fast. So when you're trying different things, no pun intended, don't beat a dead horse. Try it, and then if it works, great. If not, move on.
Question at table 28, Ashley.
As soon as I texted this in, I realized you're answering the question the whole time. But I'm a real estate broker, and in real estate, like other small businesses, we're competing with Trulia and Zillow and these monster companies that spend mega millions and on their image and their market share. And so how does a small person like me compete with the big guys, and at the same time still have time to sell real estate and make an income to keep it all rolling?
Well, do you have a phone number on your website? I guarantee you Zillow doesn't have a phone number. So my point there is you're going to be accessible. You're going to be the authority on this market. You're going to be able to engage and communicate a whole lot more personality than Zillow. And I think that's your competitive advantage, and I think that's what you play on. I think people get frustrated with certain anonymity associated with web businesses. I spent $100,000 a year with Google. I didn't even have a phone number to call them. The only thing I got was a kitchen apron that said Google on it. $100,000. It's a little frustrating as a consumer or as a customer when you're engaging with a company that doesn't want to engage back with you, and I think that would be your advantage over a lot of larger business models, because they just don't. The economics don't offer them the luxury of engaging at the level that you can engage in.
I would also think that there would be great stories about if I live in Forest Hills and found out the other day that big median in between Park Avenue and Forest Hills. We're not one of the big houses, I'm not, but I didn't know that used to be a trolley that ran through there, apparently. And to me, if I was in your position, I would say, I'm going to research this area and say, Forest Hills, find the pictures, this is what it looked like. Did you know a trolley used to go through there? And then all of a sudden you start sounding like that authority that a lot of the other real estate agents may not be telling that story. And you start wedging yourself in, that foot in the door, because most of the land in a town as old as this is going to have a story. And maybe you can get an edge by telling that better than someone else.
What do you guys see when, I think that question and many others relate to, there's so much out there now. You make widgets, you make whatever you do, you provide whatever service you do, and suddenly today, as we like to say, every company is a publisher. If you have a website, if you have a Facebook page, you're a publisher. You need to produce content, you need to tell stories, you need to engage with your audience, and I think folks who never wanted to be a publisher don't particularly want to engage in that but they're forced to because of all the different marketing channels that are out there now. What are the most common mistakes you see when businesses go out there and try to fulfill that role?
That's a good question.
Sure wish we had some marketing
Can you use that in a
experts
sentence? I think when people think of engagement, they're thinking of what message can I advertise, and I don't necessarily think that that's engagement. I think engagement is, what would be the conversation you would have with that person one-on-one, and it might be as much learning about that person as it is them learning about you and your business. So it'd be interesting, for example, as a real estate agent, if you were to get a lead and you were to find out what that person's interests were, what kind of music they liked, what kind of food, what their food tastes were, liberal arts, whatever it may be, and then instead of sending them houses every week that come on the market, what if you sent them events that were taking place in town and asking them if you'd want to go out and buy tickets for this theatrical event taking place at Thalian Hall. So you're engaging in that customer. It's focused around their interests, and I assure you, if you did something like that, they're going to remember you. I don't want to cannibalize the conversation, but there's a guy that I would all recommend you looking up. His name's Gary Vaynerchuk, and I'm quite impressed by him. He's a founder of what's called the Wine Library, and he used to he sells wine, and he built a $60 million wine business on the back of social networks. And he says he has a thank you department as opposed to a customer service department. The difference being customer service is reactive, thank you is proactive. And he's got a budget to his thank you department. One of the things that he did was, or one of his thank you reps did, was the guy bought a $40 case of wine, so he went out and bought him a $150 signed jersey by his favorite sports team. Long story short, that went a long way, and it turned out the guy bought something like $50,000 a year in wine because he was an avid wine collector. So I think you really got to think about engagement different than, traditionally the way it's thought about.
What do you guys say?
There's so many different things out there now as far as how to promote your products, and so many different websites and services, and it's hard to figure out where you need to be. Not to bring up my mom again, but I have created the mom rule, where if my mom comes to me with a new website or new technology and I don't know about it or I'm not on it yet, then chances are I've already missed the boat. That happened recently with Pinterest. She kept talking about his Pinterest site, and I just ignored her enthusiasm for months until I read an article in Fortune a couple weeks ago, and it said they were the fastest growing website ever. Needless to say, Mojo now has a Pinterest site. But I think it's figuring out which avenues you need to be at. And sometimes we look at our competition and see what they're doing, see where they are, to figure out if they're finding our customers in different places, like on Pinterest, other places than Facebook, and just on Google. User groups, news groups are a big source of traffic for us, where people are talking about our products all to themselves. And if you can figure out a way to get in there and not necessarily sell your product, but again, be the authoritative source and jump in the conversation and help somebody with a problem that they're having with their amplifier. Again, not to promote yourself because they're against that on user groups, but just to get into the community and get involved with your audience.
We're big believers in experiential marketing to like the jersey or things like that. We all vets and dentists and independent pharmacists have to do continuing education to keep their licenses. So every year it's either Vegas or Atlanta or some place like that. So last year the conference was in Vegas for the veterinarians, and we said, well, we know the majority of you work with dogs and cats all day, but we rented out all of Siegfried and Roy's lions and tigers and bears, oh my, for the night, set up a buffet and said, we know you tussled with the Labradoodle yesterday, but check this puppy out over here, and they just loved it. And it cost just as much as some big, huge, expensive dinner out in the Vegas Strip that all the other banks were doing. but they went home and just raved on Facebook. I had another thing with the students when we had them all in one place for a conference, and they just got PowerPointed to death for 3 days, and it was in Orlando. And I said, okay, now they said now it's time for Live Oak's sponsor speech, and they've got a plan for an hour or 2 hours. And I got up and I said, I've been to all of your schools. I know how hard you work. I'm sending everybody to Disney World, and we spent, I think it was only like $8,000. We just bought the ticket in 2 buses and sent everybody to Disney World. And these people some of them had never been to Disney World. Now they associate that with us forever. And it was viral on Facebook for months. People freaking out with ears and goofy ears. And it cost as much as 2 print ads. So I'm a big believer in trying those things out, those associations, and then having faith. The conversation you want to have will occur. And now I've created people that market for us across the country without me even being there.
Well, before we let you go, we always like to ask our panels for one message to leave people with. So if you can look into your crystal balls for a minute and think about, the topics that we've been talking about, particularly tied to the internet and online marketing and e-commerce and social media, and for this audience of business people, what is the one thing you think they need to be thinking about for next 2-3 years? Jimmy, you want to start?
Yeah, wear socks. I would say this, especially with Twitter and Facebook and that the social media side of things, less so than your website, but still on your website, no matter your business. If you're going to attack Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, before I did this, I was actually a high school principal, and the problem at our school, it was a little teeny school in Pinehurst, North Carolina, was school spirit, and it was just awful. Nobody liked going to games, doing anything like this. I got a lot of energy, if y'all couldn't tell, and I was like, we're gonna blow this thing out of the water. We're gonna have a bonfire and a car bash. First night, first time we do it before the game, there might have been 11 people and 2 were my family members, But you got to stay with it. And then the next year, 30 people came, and I tried a few different things to get people there. The next year, 70 people came, and then finally it becomes the roaring 400-person car bash. And there's the fail fast. You don't want to keep dumping money into something that is clearly failing. But building community on social media will take time and effort. And I was going to say that one thing that is the big turnoff for me is stale. Don't be stale, where you see a blog and one post is January 17th and the next is March 3rd. You got to stay with it, and you got to stay engaged. And once that ball starts rolling downhill, it turns into a cartoon snowball. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and faster. And if you build it, they will come. Just don't get discouraged when you have one retweet in a month of you're trying your hardest.
Michael?
One thing that's big with us right now is, I'm sure you've all heard it before, in order to manage it, you have to be able to measure it. So, if you go out and you start a pay-per-click campaign, a lot of people do this. They'll just, throw a budget out there of $50 a month, $500 a month, whatever it is, set up their keywords, and they're done. Where you really got to look at the results, almost daily, and see what's working and what's not working, because search trends change, and your customers' wants and needs change. And you got to be able to look at it and do more of what's working and what's not working. Along the same lines, look at your analytics for your website and see where your traffic's coming in. See, how your customers are finding you. And if your web hits are going down, try to figure out why. And if they're going up, definitely try to figure out why. So that would be my advice.
So how many people have a banker? Raise your hand. Surely there's going to be more hands than that. Is there a run on the banks? How many people found their banker on Google? I don't see any hands. How many people found their banker from a referral from a friend or a colleague? Okay, about the same number of people that claim to have a banker to begin with. So here's my point. People would rather do business with somebody that was personally referred to them than somebody that delivered them a marketing message, unless they have no choice. And that concept, I don't believe, spans generations. Whether you're 13 years old and you want to figure out the best person to trade silly bands with, or you're 75 years old and you're looking for the best person to manage your retirement, you would appreciate a referral before being delivered a marketing message. And that's what I think the future holds for internet, that the social technology that's available really gives people the opportunity to turn to their social stream to figure out to help them make decisions with their, not just their personal life, but with their business. And that's the power of social. So a lot of people that don't have Facebook accounts or don't have Twitter accounts, I encourage you to experiment with it. You don't have to become a avid or loyal Facebook user, but you have to recognize that certainly younger generations are using those tools to do what you probably did at the local coffee shop or down at the bar. So I think that's the future, and mass marketers are going to be challenged to figure out how to deliver the same messages that they've been delivering for the last 30 years within people's social streams. I think that's the future.
Great. Can we please have a round of applause for the panel?
Love listening to you all.
We have a tradition of getting books for our panelists, and this time we have a very interesting new book called The Power of Habit, which is by a New York Times writer that is interesting, many case studies and science behind how changing one habit can have a huge effect on an individual or a company, so I highly recommend it. Thank you again for coming, and we'll see you at the next breakfast.
Thanks.
Got memories? Get DVDs. Tapes won't last forever. Digital transfers will. Do it today, so you'll have your memories tomorrow. Call us at 399-1820 or online at myrealvideo.com. Mold and time ruin videotapes. Tapes won't last forever. Digital transfers will. Do it today, so you'll have your memories tomorrow. Call us at 399-1820 or online at myrealvideo.com.